Hello, good afternoon, good morning. For those of you on the West Coast, good afternoon, I think, for everybody else. I'm Brenda Morrison, and with Balancing Act, I'm going to show my screen for 30 seconds because, like everybody else, I'm home, and I think everybody is using the internet. So I'm going to show that I am a real person for about 5 seconds just to say hello, wave to all of you. I'm hoping hello from my home office in Denver, Colorado. Thanks to everyone for joining us. And just while I do have my real face up here, I just wanted to thank you on behalf of all of our team here at Balancing Act for all of your hard work and service to the public at this time. It is not easy to be working in local government right now during this time, and citizen expectations are so high. There's so much pressure on you. This is the one time when citizens are so aware of the services that local government provides. And we just wanted to thank you all for spending the noon hour, at least those of you in the Mountain Time Zone, with us, and hope that Balancing Act can assist you and provide some value for you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my screen here as we proceed. So thank you for joining us. For those of you that aren't familiar with GoToMeeting, looks like most of you are. You're all muted, but if you would like to ask a question, feel free to unmute yourself. There's also the wave your hand feature. Please feel free to use that. There's also the chat feature. So please, at any time during this hour, feel free to go ahead and use that. Just so you know who's on the call from our end, I'm joined by our Director of Sales, Peter Dietrich, my colleague, Chris Adams, who you'll hear from later, and our Chief Developer, Dan Ferguson, who's also on the line. So some of you I have spoken to, but if about why you're choosing, why you're interested in this webinar, and I'm assuming, and we're just going to jump right in, that most of you saw or heard Chris on the GFOA webinar last week about how to handle budget cutting during a recession. And so I think I know all of you. So if anyone would really like to jump on quickly and ask and say why they're interested in Balancing Act, that would be great. If otherwise you're sitting at your desk eating lunch, that's fine too. So if anyone would like to let us know why you're interested or address something specific during this webinar, again, please let us know. All right, well then we're gonna go ahead and just jump right in with how to use Balancing Act. Just so you know who's on the call today, you're from all over the United States, all different size communities, from welcoming some of those here in our home state of Denver, Colorado, that's where we're located, here in Denver, but also several from California, several from the West Coast, that is California, the East Coast, the southern part of the country, Alaska. And again, all different constituencies from the Public Health Department, Coconino County, several counties, and cities of all different sizes. So thank you so much. If you didn't get your name on here, it's because we might have just heard from you a little too late today. Usually when we do this presentation, we start with this slide, which is that normally you can do Balancing Act is great to do all year round, but this is a different time, and Balancing Act really can help provide a terrific way for residents to and staff to understand the delicate situation that this COVID virus has enabled for local government. This is just some headlines that I picked up from today, that what's happening here in Colorado, that it's burning budgets, that this was from Texas. Local governments already hit by the coronavirus. Recession triggered by COVID could lead to 5.5 billion drop in tax revenue. And you all know this, and we don't have to emphasize this, but Balancing Act as a tool was born out of the 2008 recession, when my colleague and I saw the dramatic budget cuts that were happening here in the state of Colorado, specifically to higher education, public health, K through 12 education, and we needed a way to convey this to the public so that more people could understand what our lawmakers were dealing with. And it is a great way for residents as well as staff to understand that we're all in this together. The pain is going to have to be shared across departments, across a county, across a city, and that there are tough choices to be made. And this Balancing Act really provides a very good way to engage all your different stakeholders. So we're going to just quickly get started today. We're going to discuss logging in, the control panel, what you put in Balancing Act, how you enter your data, if there's some context you'd like to provide, and using it remotely with our meeting mode. Okay, does Aaron, do you have a question? Go to questions. Okay. Erin writes that she's interested in a tool that can help city staff and residents understand the impact of making budget decisions. Well, that we have for you. So we believe we'll be able to answer that question, and you will see the value in using Balancing Act. So I noticed, I think most of you activated an account. And once you activate your account, and Peter, I believe is, if he hasn't already activated your account, he's doing it right now. He's activating your account, and you log in with your email, and you will come to our control panel right here. Very simple, our dashboard. And right underneath the dashboard, you'll see simulations. All you do is you click on that. That's where you get started. The control panel is the heart of developing your simulation. I got a call last week from Jeanette in Chadron, Nebraska, saying, geez, what do I include? What should I put in my simulation? So we've thought a lot about this over the years. We've been doing this for a few years, and we've gotten great feedback from your peers who've been using this for several years. So there's a 5 types of data that you can put in your Balancing Act. One is your category. So in this case, some communities use very straightforward categories: public safety, public works, maybe parks and recreation, straightforward categories. Other communities use outcome-based budgeting, so they might have a more broad statement like keeping our communities safe, and then putting there any kind of departments that keep communities safe under that broad category. It's really up to you how you do it. So there's the categories, there's the subcategory, which is police, subcategory of public safety, and then there's the more info. There's a subcategory amount you put in. You can put in more information because it's good. Not everybody's familiar with all of these categories. Obviously, they're familiar with what police does, but some of your other lesser known categories, people aren't as familiar with. And so it's good to put some context in to use the more information box, and we'll talk a little bit about how you do that, but we encourage you to use that liberally. And there's even a more details that allows you to even add more details. And what we're going to see, and what's different, what we find is unique about Balancing Act, is we do know that it's important and essential that residents understand that there are constraints, that there's not all the money in the world, there's consequences to their decisions, and that there's context to their decisions. We know that if you just put one side of the ledger up there, if you just put the expenditures or you just put the revenue and they can't see both sides of the ledger, that their decisions are not as good, and there's good evidence to back that up. I think Chris spoke about that last week on the GFOA webinar, and we're happy to send you a broadcast of that webinar so you can listen in full, or the evidence or the papers that support that. But when we designed that, we felt like it was essential that those three things were involved, were at the heart of balancing act. So what makes a good category? Well, I did not come from a budget background. So what I always kind of take what's a good category is, doesn't, to be honest, work for me. And that you guys, to be honest, you're in your books all the time. You know your categories inside and out, but someone like me or doesn't. So you have to think about, using, your neighbor next door. Would they know what I'm talking about if I use, if I say public safety, do people understand what that is? Is that the right category to convey? That's police and fire. So when you're thinking about your categories, it may not be exactly the same as what you present to your finance team or your city manager or even your city council who may be immersed in this. You want to make it pretty relatable, understandable to the public. So you can put departments. You can definitely categorize by department. You can categorize by an issue or an outcome. The other thing that we'd really ask you to think about is to not go crazy and make it super long, because the public, they only have a certain amount of patience and appetite to go on this simulation. So you have to think of how much time someone will spend. Obviously, in the order you put it, people's eyes always go to the top. If something's at the top, then I might think, wow, that's the most important category that they want me to look at. So that is a little bit about creating your categories. If you're creating subcategories, so let's just say under public safety, I might put police. I want people to focus on police. Maybe I want them to focus on fire. It's which subcategories you want them to learn more about. They don't need to know every time or how much necessarily you spend on pencils or printers or computers, but it's what do you want your public to know? What is the most important subcategories? We'll have some examples later on. For the revenue side, we would tell you to not be afraid to think about smaller, to roll up smaller categories. Debt interests or things that are not the debt interest, that's on the other side, but smaller categories, smaller taxes, or things that don't involve that much money. Think about just hitting the highlights, let's put it that way. On the revenue side, you can adjust by rate or amount. So it's flexible. So how does it work? And I'm going to go ahead and let's start building a simulation together. Clay Brown from the Department of Local Affairs here in Colorado, we were talking, and he said we gladly could use an example, but I'm going to use his account today. So when you create a simulation, you see up on the upper right-hand side, once you press simulation, you'll get this button that says create a simulation. You just press it. You title your simulation, whatever you'd like. I'd encourage you, you'll probably do multiple iterations. I just encourage you to keep track of them. So as you're testing and you're doing multiple iterations, just keep your name straight. Test 1, test 2, test 3. You can, we do have different languages. And then there's, you would decide you would be starting from scratch. That's where you start. You would say, yeah, I'm going to start from scratch. And at this point, I think we're just going to go ahead and make one. So just so you know, though, there are two methods of importing your data. Several of you have asked about this. Some of you use different budgeting systems. Some of you use good old Excel. Others use Tyler, Munis, Questica, all different types. If you are a Questica customer, let us know, because we do have an easier way to work with them. But it's either way, all you really have to do is get your data into a CSV file. And I think we're going to go ahead and do this now. So let's go ahead and create a simulation. So here is, I'm just going to go ahead and move this. So here is Clay from Department of Local Affairs, Colorado, and he says, gosh, I want to create a new simulation. All he does is he clicks on create a new simulation. I want to hide this. He creates a new simulation. You put your name in, and I'm just going to say this is our April 6th webinar. I want it in English. I'm going to start from scratch. And then I'm going to press continue. All right, so it's telling me, all right, I'm ready to go. I'm going to import my revenue first. I'm going to import it through a CSV. We have a template here available for you for those of you that don't want to create it. We have a very, very easy template that you can put your data into. So it looks like I'll show you a copy of the template in a minute. But if I'm going to import from a CSV, here's my, it's here. We've got an IndyTown CSV. Here it is in an Excel. It's just if you use our template, it's already saved in a CSV. It's really easy. So here it is. I'm just going to import it. You can just press done. You don't need that right there. Here's half of your simulation is already done. Spending, same drill. I'm just going to import it from a CSV file. I'm going to say spending. And press done here. And then here it is. It's already done. So I did one for a community just west of Denver here for Clay the other day. And I did it Saturday night. I didn't have much to do. And I did his whole simulation, and I didn't even have it in an Excel file. He gave me a PDF, and I put it into an Excel file. I did it in about an hour and a half. So if I want to just look at what I did, I press preview. And here it is. So all balancing act, you'll all have you get a splash page that just tells people what's about going to happen. They press get started, and here you are. You're in the simulation. Back to just here where here was the category, was police, the subcategories, operations, detention, civilian, and your users can plus or minus this. The default over here is 1%, but you can change this however you'd like. Any questions on that? So I'm going to send you this PowerPoint just in case you need to refresh your memory after we're done. Here was the template that I mentioned that you can download. Just again, has the category, the subcategory, the amount. You can even add your text for your more information and your more details. It really is a very effective and efficient way to use our tool quickly. And we're thinking that because you signed up for this webinar, that you're interested in getting going pretty soon. If you don't use a CSV file, and I've had this happen, I forget a category, or I think of something later and I don't want to go back and change things. There is a way to you add your categories manually. To be honest, you just go to add category. It's up at the top. You just click it and it will give you a blank space, and you can just add your category. Nice, neatly, no problem. Again, we just saw this, but this little icon, more information, we really encourage you to use that. Context is so important. I've had so many people ask about public health and budgets, because it was something that very few cities or counties had, to be honest, they didn't put a lot of emphasis on it. And now people really want to know what public health department is doing. So it's important to use that information. You don't want to go crazy, because again, people's attention span is not always be great, but be really clear and about what you want them to know about that department. You can add more information manually as well. If you don't use a CSV file, you can just click that little icon up at the top and add more information manually. Either way, this is where you add more information. So if I was adding more information about sales tax in that part where everybody sees right when you click the I just go here. It gives you about 400 characters, so you got to be pretty succinct. This will be the part when they just initially go to the I. But if you do want to give people more detail, maybe there's a graph, maybe there's a link, maybe there's a video, you can add lots more information in the more details. So here's where you can add a picture, you can add a link, you can add videos to this. I strongly suggest that you use it. This came from Dane County, Wisconsin, which is the area surrounding Madison. And as you can see, this was for a department in the Human Services Department. I think it was for older adults. And as you can see, they gave a description of what the department does. It might be a little long. And if I was to press more details, though, they were saying, I do want people to know this is what one of the things we do, that we work on emergency preparedness. Again, you can add metrics. You could add now in the situation that you're in, you might want to say, if we're considering cutting a certain department, we need to cut, this is how it would impact the department. So you can put a very human face on it. You can put a very statistical face on this part. As you saw, I previewed that simulation by pressing preview. If I didn't like what I saw, I made a typo, I would just go back and edit it and make the changes I needed. I'll show you that now. But if I like what I see and I think it's ready for prime time, I can activate it. Or if I don't like it at all, I could delete it. So as I looked at this, let's say I don't like a number I have, or something to that effect, I would go back to editing it right here, and I would change something. I could change that. Maybe I had a typo. I could add a category if I don't like it, or delete a category. You can see that you can easily delete it if you'd like to by pressing this. There's the normal little trash can. Here's the more info icon right here. If I wanted to change what I wrote, if you have the little pencil, it means that you've written something. It includes operating jails and detentions and healthcare. I could edit it right here. Includes operating jails, detention, and then I could say maybe I would say this, this budget area could be impacted, could be cut by 5% because of budget cuts. All I do is press done right here. And I could go back to this and preview it. And there's my change. This budget could be cut by 5% because of that. So that's how easy it is to maneuver in and out of this simulation, this version that we're offering you. And so here we are. I hope this is clear. As I said, when you're ready for prime time, just press activate. One of the areas that we know, we hope, we realize that you might be the most interested in is, given what's happening, is you won't be able to have face-to-face meetings, especially for those of you that have June 30th end of year budgets. And you're required, you want to involve the public. Maybe you need to do it internally with your city council or your staff. We have a really great tool called Meeting Mode, and initially we designed this to use the tool in face-to-face settings, but not so much right now. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Chris Adams, who's my co-creator, to walk you through this. Chris, are you there?
I am here, and I'm trying to figure out, let's see, my screen is not showing. Let me see here. I'm going to try something.
We're all adapting to the virtual meeting world.
Yeah. Okay. Is this going to be me? No, it's not. So I've got something funny going on with my control panel. So Brenda, it's okay. We'll just go ahead and and we'll just do it from yours. So go ahead and take the presenter role back, Brenda.
Hold on, I have to find that. It's now gone. Wait. Click to. You guys. Okay. All right.
So it's under staff, under attendees and staff.
Geez, I made this too small now. No one can see it. Can I make you the presenter, Chris, right here?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. Can you see it?
Not yet.
Here we go.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm going to just go over a few quick slides. With social distancing and it really not being too safe for a group of people to congregate together, one of the things that we wanted to make Balancing Act available for free, one of the reasons is to help you get input on the budget, or to even hold budget meetings, budget hearings without having people being face-to-face. Now, the most obvious way to do that is to just use it online and let people use it whenever they want. The feedback is gathered and you can run a report on it. So that's the most common way of doing it. But we also have something called Meeting Mode, which is a way for you in real time to actually see what users think and even have a conversation on it. And it can be used with Zoom or GoToWebinar or whatever. This is a picture of a group of people using Meeting Mode in Kansas City, and as you can see, they've got it on their devices and so forth, and they've actually had quite a bit of success with this approach. This is 2018, and this year Kansas City won GFOA's Award for Excellence in Public Engagement on the Budget. This is a picture, we're seeing more and more cities, counties, local governments, school districts using it internally. And this was actually a fantastic meeting of staff of about 400 people, which would be a fun thing to do. It'd be a great thing to do to get budget buy-in, to kind of have people work through tough decisions, especially as you're cutting your budget. But of course, in the age of social distancing, you don't want to do that. So we want to show you how to use Meeting Mode, which is included in our free version that is available to all of you. And it takes just a little bit of setup. So once you've gotten to where Brenda has gone, it's actually pretty simple to set up meeting mode. So if you're looking at my browser right now, Brenda was in the simulations tab, and that's where you set up your simulations. But if you go down to meetings, you'll see the option to create a meeting. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to create a meeting, and I'm going to call this test or demo on April 6th. And then I'm going to choose, so basically what this is creating is it's creating a special URL, special access point to the simulation that requires a special URL that people can use in a real-time setting. And then I'm going to choose the budget that it should apply to. So I'm going to choose one that I've already published. And I'm going to say continue. And then it gives me a couple options. And you really don't have to do much of anything because the budget is already set. We just picked that. If you want to put in the location, you can. If you want to describe it, you can. But really, that's about it. There's this more advanced feature down here called Use Entire Budget that's checked by default. That one, if you're interested in that, we've got a little bit of help on that, but I wouldn't worry about it. Most people just go ahead and start from here. So I'm going to save that. And then what that's going to do is up here, it's going to give me the option to share this. Hello? Oops. It's going to give me the option to, no, I think there we go. It's going to give me the option to share it with the public. So I'm going to open the public view, and this would be the URL for it. And the thing about this is that it's a little bit different than the version Brenda was showing you because people can go and they can interact with the budget. They can add things, they can decrease things, they can do all sorts of things. But with meeting mode, they need to push submit category. And so once they do that, I'll just do a couple of changes on the spending side as well, or on the revenue side as well. And I'm going to submit the category. And then we've got what we call facilitator view, the facilitator screen. So I'm going to open that up in incognito because it'll have a black background. That way we can distinguish it. And so the idea here is that in the facilitator view, it gives you the aggregated results of everyone who just went through this. And it does it in real time. Every 30 seconds, it refreshes. And so you might recall, I increased police operations by $32,000. And so since I was the only person using that particular link, it's the only one that shows up here, and it shows an increase. And then we're not, these are sort of a more advanced type of question. We call these scenario questions. So I won't really go into those right now. But then we've also got detention, which I decreased. And then over here on the taxes side, as you might recall, I decreased sales taxes and I decreased property taxes. And so the nice thing about this is that you can have, everybody can kind of go through this, and we've got some meeting designs that we can share with you about how to, sort of introduce this to people and how to help people walk through. And then you can sort of see what people said. And it might be the case that you have a bunch of people that want to spend more money on police patrol. And if it's in a real-time setting, whether or not it's face-to-face or it's using Zoom or GoToWebinar, you can actually have questions. So somebody with knowledge of the police department could say, well, why did so many people want to increase spending on police? And the person who increased it might say, well, because I don't feel safe. Well, then there's an opportunity for a conversation. You say, well, why don't you feel safe? And they might say, well, my street is so dark. Well, all of a sudden, you've just found out that the reason why people want to spend more money on police patrol is because they feel safe, because their street is dark, not because they necessarily think that there need to be more police officers. So we think it's a really useful tool. It can be used with departments to do internally to frame up department budget requests. It can be used with your decision makers and at the city manager level with department heads to decide on decision items. It can be used very effectively, I think, with council. Often council doesn't really know where the role in the budget is. Sometimes they dive too deep and they get really hung up on a $50,000 line item or a half-time FTE line item, and they don't really spend much time on the rest of the budget. And then other times they don't really engage at all, and they just kind of get the big budget book and they say, that's fine, let's go. This allows you to sort of frame up those items, you very carefully selecting the subcategories that Brenda was talking about, so that you can kind of direct where their attention is most needed, because councils are busy, they're busy bodies of busy groups, and they don't have infinite time. So this can allow you to frame up that question. So that's essentially how that works. And then you get meeting results, and you also get results on your simulation page. I'm just going to show you quickly where to find results, because I'm sure we'll get that question. If you go to one that is activated, you can download a report, and this just comes as a CSV, and it downloads and it gives you all the actions of what anybody has done. So just to recap here, meeting mode. You can use it with online meeting or streaming platforms. You just want to broadcast the facilitator screen and then distribute to everyone, to your public or to your participants, whether it's council, members of the department heads, or whatever. Distribute that public view, and you can view the meeting results in real time. And the facilitator view, it's just like you were projecting it in real time. Just go back to this picture. It's just like you had it up here so that people could all see and then discuss. And then that will, hopefully give you a good sense of what people in the room or people in the Zoom meeting suggested. In terms of just some tips, the thing that people forget the most is to click that submit category, that green one down at the bottom. We've got a participant tutorial. We'll share this deck with you in just a moment, but it gives a little walkthrough of how to do the simulation. I suggest we started our business more than 20 years ago as facilitators. I suggest that you sort of provide an opening statement and do a walkthrough of the simulation and highlight your key areas of concern, kind of direct people where you think their input is most valued. And then, just kind of cut them loose, give them 10 minutes or so to go through the simulation on their own, and you can watch the facilitator screen and see the results coming in. And if it looks like people haven't touched an area, you can say, nobody's really looked at public works. Could you all take a few minutes and go respond to some of those items? And then you can finish by just doing a debrief using the facilitator screen. And then if you're using GoToWebinar, just like we are right now, you can have people raise their hand. You can unmute them so that they can provide input. This is just a slide that I use often when we facilitate meeting mode. Is just a slide that sort of reminds them to do the submit category. So it's got a big red arrow. It's a submit category. You're welcome to use this. It's got the animation pre-done, and then it also tells people to look for that green check mark, which means that you've submitted your category and that your response has been received. And then I've already mentioned some of this, but the facilitator screen refreshes every 30 seconds. You can get the results for the meeting by just looking at the facilitator screen. You can also go to the cumulative report that can be downloaded from the simulations page. Every time you use the meeting mode, create a new one so that you can sort of separate input maybe from meeting with the Parks and Rec department, maybe meeting with the police department, maybe meeting with a community in like the northwest part of town or something like that. And then you can use the meeting mode and then what we call the non-synchronous feature, just the online mode. You can use them simultaneously, and it'll all get aggregated into to that CSV report that gives you everybody who submits their responses. So this is just a sample launch page. I'm going to turn it over to Brenda though, so that she can bring this home. Brenda, go ahead and grab your screen back. Mine is not working for some reason.
Okay. Okay. Okay, thanks. Yes, and if you do have questions about using meeting mode, don't hesitate to give us a, drop us an email or a call. We can definitely help you do it. One thing I did plan on just giving you a quick tour of some different simulations that to keep in mind. But I also just wanted you to know that if you create a simulation and you activated it, and maybe it was for your city council, and they suggested some changes because you're going to be making, I assume you're going to be doing different scenarios, and you may have a simulation with certain departments or certain budget cuts as you're doing your supplementals or you're doing different changes. So you may do different simulations and you may activate different simulations at different time. But a question that we're always asked is if, oh my gosh, I did this simulation, I activated it, and now maybe my city manager wants a change. What do I do? So all you need to do is you would go back to that create a new simulation, and where it would say start from scratch, you would say duplicate your simulation. So I would duplicate my simulation, and then I could make my, I would give it a new name, City Manager's Revised Budget, number 25, X different scenarios. And then I would make that change to it, and then I could activate my new one. So that's just an important thing to keep in mind. And then I thought, just again, to think about that you guys really just know so much more than, to be honest, the rest of us. And so just keep that in mind, what kind of detail you're providing and who your audience is. If your audience is City Council, that's one thing. If your audience is the public, that's another. So just kind of keep that in mind. So I thought I'd give you just a look at a couple different ones. Here's Dubuque, Iowa's official website, and they've had great success using Balancing Act. And again, and several of our communities, not Dubuque in particular, have been using Balancing Act when they've had a deficit. San Jose has used it is using it when they have a deficit. Milwaukee County's used it when they had $40 million, $30 million deficit. Baltimore County has used it when they've had a deficit. So this is a launch page. Someone did ask about kind of technically how you would do it, and this launches off the budget page off the city's website. They gave a kind of a little version of what it is, why you do it. They've got a little tutorial on it, and this doesn't take very long. And to be honest, all of our communities are welcome to copying. You can always find different ideas off of our website, but here you just link to, this is Dubuque's coming up, and you'll see that she does group some things together. So here's her arts, parks, recreation. She groups all of that into one category. And then she does go specifically into some of the line items. But that's how she does it. She's got street maintenance, snow and ice control. Now, for some people, this might be public works, but public works could be also sewer. So this is how she's decided to use her categories. In the revenue side, there's the taxes. Our advanced features allows you to lock them, but that's what Dubuque, Iowa is. Here's Dane County. This is the large county out of the Madison area. Again, here there's just their major categories in spending, and just a few categories in revenue. Here's the county tax levy. If I wanted to possibly raise it, I could. Then there's some other revenues, including licenses and permits. And I'm sure some of you may be looking at those kinds of areas as you're considering raising money. And it's if I was going to go into Health and Human Services, they have a lot, but you wouldn't need to put as many in as there are here. But again, it was important to them. They put that first because this time, which was last fall, they wanted to emphasize they were increasing spending in this area because due to a homeless issue. And so they wanted the public to know that they were emphasizing this area. So they wanted this first, knowing that people often go to the first thing. If I were to go to Children and Family Services, again, there's that. More detail. Oh, I get a video. Here's the department head. You could use a department head or a mayor or anyone to say, this is what we're facing as we're in the next year, as we're thinking about our budget. And so, let's see. Chris actually put up an interesting one at Corona, California. Let me get that one. Get that one up for you. Maybe it's here. So again, here's Corona, California. They do use taxpayer receipt, which is a different thing, but if you ever wanted to learn about that, we were happy to show it to you. They have a quick tutorial. A lot of them just make kind of homemade videos letting the public know how to use Balancing Act. Again, many of those are on our website under Learn and under Clients. All of our clients generally are happy to share how they did it. No problem. You see that it is available in Spanish too, for those of you that have Spanish-speaking populations. But if we went to Corona, California, I know that there are several of you on this call from California. Here is Corona's. They were lucky. They have a surplus. Not sure what they have now, but it might come in handy. And again, here are their categories. If I was just to go to the fire department, they have quite a different subcategories. You don't have to use this much if you don't want to. It's really up to you. So that is some ideas. We're happy again to share these slides with you. We'll be sending out an email, but we do have a few minutes left. If you does anybody have any questions? We're happy to unmute you and ask away, or if you have questions that you want to present to the whole group. We do have enough time to do that. And I'll ask at once. I know it's weird when you do webinars. If you, does anybody have a question? I don't see any marks in the questions. If you don't have any, what? Does somebody have a question?
Yes, there is. The question is, what is the cost for Balancing Act?
This version, thanks for whoever asked that question. This version, the one Chris and I just demonstrated to you, we are offering for no cost through the end of the fiscal year, through June 30th, because we know that so many of you are in need to communicate, will need to communicate as these budget questions, at least internally and maybe externally, as soon as the crisis subsides. But I'm sure that those will be internally. So for right now, this version is free of charge. We're delighted to do that for you because we're kind of all in this together. If you would like to consider a year-long subscription or advanced some of our advanced features that Chris kind of mentioned, to be able to possibly have some more flexibility with the simulation, we're happy to give you a quote. It is usually based on population though, size. But yep. To be honest, we want everyone, we want people to use this. It's important now.
Yep. The other question is, what do other communities do with fund balance? Do they use these as part of the balance?
I have seen people carry their fund balance over. Yes. So I've seen it both ways. I've seen them take it out and calculate without, and I've seen them carry it over. It's really kind of up to you. Chris, have you seen that more?
Yeah, I've seen it done in a variety of ways, and I think it depends on the type of conversation you want to frame up with your stakeholders, whether it's internal, elected, or the public. So I think it can go either way, and we'd be glad to show you a couple of different ways that that's been presented. This actually ties in with the next question, which is, can I start with a deficit? And the answer to that is yes, you can. Unfortunately, especially a lot of local governments that are dependent on sales tax, we anticipate that they will. When you start with a deficit, it actually frames up the challenge pretty starkly. And what we found is that when people understand why there's a deficit, and it's very understandable why revenue is down, that you end up getting a lot of people that want to help solve problems, and they want to do it in a realistic way. But that whole issue about starting with a deficit is, do you want to let people solve a deficit by using the fund balance, or do you want to restrict it to just being able to use half of it this year so that you still have some next year? So there's a variety of ways. I mean, Balancing Act it's meant to provide you with the tool you want to have the right kinds of conversations.
So somebody asked, is it possible to share the video and the slides with us for future reference when we start to use the model? Absolutely, that is yes. And so we will be sharing, we can share the recording for this. We'll be sharing, we'll be sending you the slides, the recordings. All of those are usually on our Learn page on our website. We have a YouTube channel as well. So yes, yes, yes.
Another question is this compliant with usability standards and ADA and all that kind of thing? And the answer is yes. Those colors that are chosen on the pie chart, for example, are very carefully chosen to have enough contrast so that people with low visibility can see. And there's also a screen reader that for people who are sight impaired, they can actually go through and navigate using their space bar. So yes, it is all ADA accessible.
Yeah, and there are some, and you'll see some when you're people ask about the colors and all those kinds of things, and they were chosen for a reason for that. So if you do have someone who's colorblind or something, yes. Oh, somebody asked, oh, I think it's answered. It's answered. If you use ClearGov. ClearGov, does Balancing Act replace or overact or complement? Chris, do you want to answer that for everybody?
Sure. So Balancing Act is pretty unique. There's about 3 other budget simulation, online public budget simulation offerings out there. One is from the United Kingdom, one is from Canada, and then we're from the US. And one thing that we like to do is we like to be able to play very nicely with other types of tools. And so if you have ClearGov, which does some nice performance data, and it does there's a budgeting module, all that information we put into Balancing Act. If you use OpenGov, for example, really nice way to get some additional use out of your visualizations. Or if you use the OpenGov budgeting tool, you can export the material that you would need to pull into Balancing Act. Questica is another budgeting company. They have a really nice visualization tool called OpenBook. All those can be plopped right into Balancing Act. So if you have those things, you can use them. If you don't have them, no problem. Most of our clients don't integrate with other apps, but we're actually a very unique tool in that we provide that interactivity, and Balancing Act does what I call the 3 C's, which we've learned is what makes a simulation work. So ClearGov is not a simulation, OpenGov is not a simulation, Questica is not a simulation. What we do is we provide a way for you to convey constraints. The most obvious one is that you can't spend more money than you have. To provide context, which is to explain what some of these visualizations mean so that people don't erroneously assume something about a line item, and then to also show consequences. And the idea here is to help you frame up trade-offs so that people can help wrestle with some of these really hard questions in an informed way, so that you can make the smartest budget decisions that you can, that are possible moving forward, and then have them be understood and supported. So that's kind of where our niche is compared to a company like ClearGov.
Are there any other questions, comments, thoughts? If you think of it afterwards, which most of us do, or you're in the simulation and you have a question, please feel free to ping one of us, any of us, Dan or Peter, myself, Chris. We're all happy to give you a hand. As I said, we are very sensitive to the pressure you have on you. As I said, you're probably the ones that, you're not in front of the cameras right now, but in about a month or 6 weeks, the conversation may shift, and you all will be the ones, providing the answers and hopefully framing up the conversation in a constructive way, or helping to frame the conversation for your elected officials and other staff members. Again, are there any other questions? Did Christy, do you see any others? Or we
Did
good?
you take the question about will we share this video in the slides?
I did. I said we will
Okay.
absolutely share this. I put my email, but I probably should have put everybody else's. But if you need more resources, we have a lot on our Learn page. Just go to our balancingact.com Learn. You can also go again to our client page. You'll see some fun videos that people have used to engage their public. Again, there's just, to be honest, there's some that are kind of a little more fun and whimsical, but probably now it won't be so fun and whimsical. You know, you could have, there's one, I think, from a mayor in Alaska where he's just looking in the camera. I think he's just using his iPhone. And you could just, you know, talk to people about why their input is serious, and that you need to, that you want it, you value it, and that you're going to use this tool to help frame up the conversation. So please, it's Brenda at A Balancing Act, it's Peter at A Balancing Act, it's Chris at A Balancing Act. So we all have our first names at A Balancing Act. And again, we appreciate you taking the time to come on. And again, thank you for all what you're doing. So on behalf of all of us here at Balancing Act, thanks. And we look forward to working with you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.